my Delicious co-creators, Lilou here. I'm in Quebec, north of Montreal, in Blainville, with Mario Beauregard, that you might recognize because I've already interviewed Mario on Skype, but it's definitely not as good as interviewing you in person at your home and having these conversations that matter, but are not about the matter. That's the interesting thing. You're actually a neuroscientist, and you are part of this kind of movement of scientists coming together, talking of post-materialism. So I'm interested to know what that is about. And I just want to, if you want to read more about Mario, because there's so much, I don't want to say evidence, but proof and things that you put together in books of the spiritual brain that is here, and Brain Wars that I really liked. I read it in French, which is called The Power of Consciousness. Interestingly enough, it's not the same title.
Yeah, I don't know, the French editor decided that The Power of Consciousness reflected more the content of the book, but the American editor thought that the conflict between the old materialist science versus the post-materialist science was more interesting, hence the title Brain Wars.
Yeah, this is published by HarperCollins, huh? HarperCollins, yeah, this is a big one.
Well, one of the biggest publishers in the United States, yeah.
Yes. So you're supported by many in your research, and tell us about, first, before we get into all those things that actually traditional science, we can say materialist, maybe brought us to this place, but maybe this is, they can't explain everything that is going on, basically. Tell us about this little reunion that you had recently.
Okay, so we'll start with the birth of modern science very rapidly. Pioneers like René Descartes, Galileo Galilei, also Isaac Newton, they proposed a number of assumptions about the nature of the universe, reality. One of them was materialism. Materialism is the idea that everything in the universe, including human beings, is composed of material particles that were called atoms. So that was a key idea at the beginning of modern science, which was proposed by the pioneers of classical physics. But all these great pioneers were also spiritual people. They never said that matter was explaining everything or was the only reality. They never said that. However, after a few centuries, the other scientists, the subsequent scientists, historically, they started to believe that only this assumption was true about the nature of reality, that we didn't need any intelligent designer at the origin of the universe to explain everything. And so they based their science on this dogma, the materialist dogma. The problem with this is that there's increasing evidence, in terms of various types of phenomena showing that this is not true at all. This old vision, worldview, is false, and that we need to move forward towards a new paradigm that we call post-materialist. And so we created a group of researchers, including people like Rupert Sheldrake, Larry Dossey, Gary Schwartz, Marilyn Schlitz, and so on and so forth.
So from IONS, also IONS people?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And we all believe that it's now time to propose a new framework in science that we call post-materialist, so after the materialist era. Mm-hmm. And it's based on various sorts of phenomena. For instance, if you take the case of near-death experience during cardiac arrest, well, this phenomenon directly challenge the old materialist worldview. Why? Because when there's a cardiac arrest, if you're measuring electrical activity in the brain using what we call an EEG, you will see that after the cardiac arrest, 10 to 20 seconds after the arrest, the cerebral activity will vanish. And in principle, in that kind of state, there shouldn't be any higher mental functions or perception, memory, consciousness, and so on and so forth. Yet, since the turn of the millennium, there have been 5 different studies showing that hundreds of people have been able to experience conscious mental activity while they were in a state of cardiac arrest, while they were clinically dead. So this is one line of evidence showing that the materialist paradigm is erroneous. But there are many other lines of evidence. For instance, quantum physics. Quantum physics have shown nearly 100 years ago that the world is not really composed of solid material particles. They speak more in terms of virtual existence or tendencies to exist for these either waves or particles. But that's only another line of evidence. There are many. We can take the case of the placebo effect, for instance. If it's true that you can reduce a human being to only electrical and chemical activity in their brain, then beliefs are not that important and shouldn't be able to exert major impact because they're only electrical activity or something that is not that is secondary. But we now know that what we believe or expect about a treatment can create a huge response within the brain and the body. And it can lead even to so-called miraculous cures. So that's another aspect which we have to take into account and which tells us that it's now time to expand our concept of reality. Another avenue of phenomena is the study of the so-called psi phenomena. For instance, telepathy, remote viewing, also psychokinesis, though the mental interaction with physical systems like random number generators, which are based on quantum processes. You also have the conscious mental intention on biological systems like plants, for instance, or bacteria and so on and so forth, and even on other human beings. So you can, for instance, influence what's happening within someone at a distance really with regard to emotional reactivities. Many hundreds of studies have been done to demonstrate that.
And tell us about the brain and how the brain is, what is the role of the brain in all this? And can we build over time some kind of brain that will have this capacity to live those phenomena or be open to that more and more regularly, even going all the way to cosmic consciousness, as you're calling it?
Yes. Well, yeah, we can exert a tremendous impact on what's happening in the brain through the concept of neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is the idea that the brain can change across the entire lifespan. Before, for nearly a century, neuroscientists believed that the brain was a static machine that couldn't change. It was hardwired and you could influence the brain, but only during the first years of the life. But now we know that it's possible for the brain to change in terms of the activity of the brain regions and also the structure of these regions, the white matter and gray matter contained in these regions, for instance. And so there's plasticity involved during the entire life. And so you can do things that will modify the way your brain is functioning. If you start doing meditation, for instance, even for only a few months, you change the activity of the brain regions involved in attention, concentration, also empathy. If you're doing loving kindness meditation, for instance, you do that and you change also the structure of these regions, like I said before. You can also do neurofeedback and you will start exerting conscious and voluntary control over what's happening in your brain. And you can reach a very high degree of, of mastering what's happening in your brain through this technique. But you can do other things as well. You could, you can pray, contemplate, do sensory deprivation techniques. you can use also psychedelic substances, for instance, and through all these various techniques and means, you will change the electrical and chemical activity of the brain. And in some cases, you will be able to, I compare that to a TV station, for instance. So the brain to a TV station, that is. So usually, you're only able to select a few channels or frequencies. And that's how most people live. And so that's why they perceive only certain aspects, restricted aspects of reality. But if you're able to synthesize other frequencies, higher frequencies, for instance, you will have access to other aspects of reality. And so, for instance, when you have a near-death experience, we've done preliminary studies in our lab showing that it alters the way the brain processes the information from an electrical standpoint. So there are different markers of electrical activity in the brain after these experiences. So it's possible to be able to change the brain, which normally acts as a sort of filter. It filters information, or if you want to call that frequencies, from other aspects or realms of reality. But it's possible to alter this filter function, to deactivate it through various means. And also sometimes it happens spontaneously, apparently. And so some people can have very, very intense spiritual experiences without seeking to reach or to have these experiences. It happens.
So for you, science and spirituality doesn't have to go one again separately?
Not at all. Absolutely not. Because, you know, ultimately they want to reach the same point. Science wants to understand the ultimate reality. And, you know, the spiritual person wants to experience ultimate reality. So there's a convergence between these two.
What's quite not amusing, but like surreal is what the definition of reality is in the end, and life. You know, what is it? Because there's so many levels, yes, isn't there, to live it?
Well, philosophically, reality means what is. So yes, there are many levels of. We could say that there are many different levels of reality, and so it's like if you take the case of vision, we can have access to only a very restricted portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. We cannot see, for instance, in the ultraviolet domain. Bees and some types of birds can do that. We cannot. So the experience of bees, the conscious experience of the world, is completely different than ours, and vice versa. But what I want to convey is that if you transform your brain, or your brain is transformed through certain experiences, then you can have your interface is changing, and then you'll have access to greater portions of what we call reality.
So the powers of consciousness are what?
Well, the influence that we can have on the brain and all the physiological systems connected to the brain, like the immune system, the endocrine system. We now know also that we can even influence consciously the expression of genes, gene expression. So that's related to the new science of epigenetics. Bruce Lipton is talking a lot about this. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is that we can influence what's happening also outside the confines of the brain and the body through these psi capacities, for instance. And you see that also during a near-death experience in a cardiac arrest, because there's no brain activity in that kind of state, yet your consciousness is operating beyond the confines of the body. So that's another aspect. And finally, you can realize in certain transcendent states, transpersonal states, that you become one with the source, the intelligent source at the origin of everything in the universe. So you're much more than your little usual self also. So
and self-healing is possible.
Absolutely, self-healing is possible. And if you want to do that, you know, there are levels. Larry
It's not even called self-healing, sorry to interrupt, but it's self seems small. So it's self with a big S.
Yes, but Larry Dossey has made a distinction between these different types of healing. So there's the first level. He was talking about era 1 medicine and era 2 medicine and so on and so forth. But you can try to heal at the level of your little self. So, for instance, if you try to use mental imaging and stuff like that, you can fight a cancer, for instance, using mental images, and this has been done for a few decades now, with different successes. Depends on the people, but you can also try to reach another level, a more spiritual perspective, the perspective of your higher self, if you will, and then it's likely that your impact on your body and on the external world and the universe at large will be greater, because you're closer to the source of everything that exists. You see, that remains to be demonstrated scientifically, but I think it's a likely hypothesis.
Yeah. I'm always very surprised at the impact of one therapy versus another, depending on our connection with the healer.
Yes, that's another factor.
There's a system of resonance or something. Is that being studied?
Gary Schwartz at the University of Arizona has done studies. He was measuring electrical activity in the brain of both the healer and the healee at the same time using EEG. So he was measuring electrical activity. And he found that there was, when the treatment was most successful, it was when there was a resonance in terms of the EEG patterns in both the healer and the healee. There was synchronization. So yes, there are some evidence that this is indeed the case. Yeah. Mm.
So that is the fertile ground for consciousness to act or to be part, or that I don't know how to say it because it's so intangible, but that something happens positively, or there's a change once we're in resonance. We know it's the right healer. We feel it's the right moment. I mean, there seems to be this this power that we're starting to cultivate and have and feel inside of us through intuition and other things, and trusting ourselves that this is the right moment, and then some miracles can happen then. But it seems like it's coming down to us really knowing and owning who we are. I mean, not who we are, but this potential, this power, this beauty, this connection that there is. No, there's something to that. Like the power is back in our hands, kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say in these books. Yeah, totally.
Beautiful. This is good news.
Yeah, great news. Mm-hmm.
Is there something else that you would like? Because I know you speak in there of hypnosis and of remote viewing and of near-death experiences and all those different things.
Yeah, what we could say is that if you take together all these phenomena, it suggests that what we call mind and consciousness are non-local. That is, they don't reside or not, they are not produced within the brain or the body, but they constantly interact with the brain and the body. And it means also that what we call mind and consciousness is not separated from the physical world, the world of the so-called world of matter, the world investigated by physics. So there's a deep fundamental interconnection between the world of the mind and spirit and the world of matter. And so it probably means that mind and matter and also physics, the physical world, and they all originate from a common underlying source, a common principle, and that's why they are able to interact between themselves. That's what I would say, which means that we have great power. Yeah.
It's time for a post-separation, beyond the separation.
Yeah, because there's no separation in reality.
Yeah.
It's only
It's an illusion.
exactly. Yeah. So I'm not, because I've been accused of being a dualist. To argue that the dualist believes that there's the world of matter, the world of mind, and that they are separated. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think that we perceive experientially that there's matter and that we are conscious, we have thoughts and emotions, but that's only at a superficial level. But in reality, if you go further than that, you'll discover that they both belong to a single world. There's no real separation between all this. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mario Beauregard.
Thanks to you.
Really excited to share this with you today. Thank you for watching, and please spread it, share it wildly. We send you much love. I send you much love, at least, from here, from Quebec, and wishing you an amazing, beautiful day. Much love. Bye.